taking a little quick vacation. So let's go ahead and just jump right in if we can to, I'll call the meeting to order, and then let's vote on the approving the agenda for today. I think everyone's gotten a copy of the agenda from Jana, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to do a
Move to approve.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Chris.
Go, Barbara.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a quick vote on that. Emily is not here yet.
Yes.
Barbara?
Emily?
Yes.
Hello, yes.
Oh, Emily, there you are. Okay, Emily, aye.
Yes.
Okay, Barbara, that was an aye. Sharon?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Brent is not here yet, right?
Yes, he is.
Brent is now?
Yes.
I'm here.
He just came on there. Okay, Brent, approve the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Chris?
Yes, aye.
Okay, has Garrett joined us while I've been looking down? No. Okay.
No.
And Janet is not going to be here. And Gail?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. And let's do the same real quickly for the consent agenda. I don't know that we need to make a motion, but if somebody wants to, we can.
Move to approve.
Right here, a second.
Second.
Anyone want to second Gail's motion to approve the consent agenda now?
Second that motion.
I'll second and aye.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll vote aye. Emily, that was an aye. Barbara?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Okay, and we still don't have Garrett or Janet, so Gail.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any public comments? I don't show any, but is there anyone waiting for that? No. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right into the reports. Library friends? Do we have either Clay or Ruth maybe? No, let's skip over that then and move on to the foundation. Karin, I see you there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I have a short report. At the beginning of September, the foundation sent out its second e-solicitation or e-message. Thank you for some of you who donated to that. We are gearing up for another message in November when we will also do our traditional paper mailing. And we are looking, this year we're focusing heavily on increasing our annual unrestricted giving and increasing donors. So any way that you can help with that, we appreciate. We also have been submitting a few grants. The most recent one was to Dominion Foundation just this last week in hopes of getting some funding to purchase more books for things like the RVA Reads program and things related to curbside service. And the audit has begun. So we're in the heavy, if I can say it, slog period where all we do is upload and send stuff to the auditor in hopes that by about the end of October, we'll have our audit complete. So that's it for me. That's what's going on at the foundation these days.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Karin? No. Okay, one thing I might real quickly add is obviously we're not the foundation, we're not responsible for the fundraising, but any help that you can give, any contacts that you think that Karin and her group should make and so on, it's always appreciated. And I'll make a pitch that I think it's great if our board members can show some level of support. Doesn't have to be anything big, but just a little something is nice to be able to show that everybody on our board does recognize the great work the foundation does. So, you know, if it's a few dollars or on up from there, anything I would recommend or urge you to try to help out if you can. Okay.
Well, thank you.
I'm sorry. Karin?
I just said thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's move on to Scott. Do you want to do both the administrative, Scott, and your board chair? I mean, yours, and also you're doing the board chair for finance. I mean, the finance chair and facilities. Scott? Do we not have Scott?
We do. He's muted.
Okay,
Muted.
there he is, right in the middle.
Sorry.
Yes. with the
I'm
long
here.
hair.
I hear my name and I start talking and I assume that we're all in the same
I think
room.
we all do that.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I can give you all a brief update. The Friends met last month and they are just starting to plan their annual meetings because Ruth's not here. I'm not sure. I hadn't heard from Ruth, but they haven't really moved too much. I think one of the things they're trying to figure out is, their big fundraiser is the fall book sale, and they're not sure how they're going to be able to do that. So they're really just in a holding pattern in terms of fundraising, but they're going to go ahead and try and have their annual meeting, but they're trying to put that together in terms of what does that look like in a Zoom setting. So that was pretty much the last meeting. They have supported with bags. They reached out to the foundation and purchased some bags for our curbside pickup. So I think they're providing bags with their logos and things on it for all of them. So that's pretty much it for the Friends. In terms of my report, I can let you know, I can update my staff report. We do have an employee who will retire at the end of this month, Yvonne Jones. She's been with us about 24 years and she'll retire on September 29th. So we're trying to figure out how to have a little retirement party for her in the Zoom setting. So cake and Zoom and something like that is what we're going to do. But she's a longtime employee and she'll be sadly missed, but we're very happy for her.
Sounds good.
We've
Scott, does that put our vacancies up by one more over the?
Not yet, not until she officially retires, and then they have to go a month after, but that position is funded, so we should be able to fill that one pretty quickly. I did get some good news from HR. They've put a new team in charge of our hiring positions, and they're going to start relying on NeoGov, which is an electronic tool that can move the paperwork electronically instead of in paper. So they're going to transition over to that. So I am hopeful that we can start moving things faster through HR. One of the questions I had for them was, how are we going to interview these people? I've got about 8 vacant positions right now. Once we proceed, how are we going to do that in the COVID setting? Well, they have a new tool called, starts with Spark, but it's a thing where you send a person the questions, they do a video presentation, and then that just goes right to our hiring manager. So that will definitely speed up the process in terms of hiring instead of having to do them all in person. So I'm hopeful that we can start moving a little faster on our vacancies, and if we can get them moved through the hiring freeze, then that'll help too. But so good news on that front. We do have one employee who is in quarantine for COVID right now. That's come down from, seems like we keep getting them because folks get exposed, but right now that person's just waiting on a test result. So we haven't had, other than that, we don't have anybody else out on COVID. Again, curbside is going well. You'll notice that we had about 70% of the circulation this last month as we did same time last year. So I really see that as a positive in terms of what we're providing. And we've been getting a lot of very positive feedback from patrons on the virtual services we're providing. So I'm very pleased with how that all is going.
I think you even had one branch where it was up above last year, didn't you?
It could be. I just looked at the bottom line, Bill. Was one of them above?
I think so, but I'd have to go back and check. Go on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
No, that's fine. But yeah, I think we've been doing a really great job with that. The other thing I have let's see. So that's pretty much, was there any other questions specifically on my report? The thing you all asked me to do was provide you with an update of the programs that we're providing for children, young adults, and teens, or small children, young adults, and that list of items is in the report.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move on.
Comfortable.
I can give you like a quick update on the facilities in terms of the master plan. We've narrowed it down to 4 firms, and those are Quinn Evans, which is a local firm, Stanley Hart, a firm called MSR, and Anteros Design. Those are the top 4 out of the 15 that we reviewed and evaluated. And then next week we will bring them in for a socially distanced interview process in our auditorium on Monday and Tuesday. So those 4 firms will have 2 hours apiece to present, explain their process, how they work, and we'll make a selection from those 4. I have requested, I put a request out to procurement to ask if we can include a member of the facilities committee. They're checking their policies to confirm or not allow that. Last time they wouldn't allow it, so I've asked them again. I'm just awaiting an answer.
Okay.
So as soon as I find out, I'll let Janet know and the rest of you all know.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, may I add to that, the facilities report?
Yep.
At Whole Street Library,
Oh, yeah.
the architecture firm has been chosen for that repair process. You remember that
Mhm.
it was a bad automobile accident. So a PO was created, and so we're going to be starting that process soon.
Good.
Good.
And when we're open now there, right? This is just,
Yes,
we're not able to fully, and we're able to do curbside fine there.
correct.
Yeah, the branch is open. They're in curbside, but they've also set up some bistro tables out on the sidewalk, and they have some Chromebooks. So when people walk up and need maybe more than just something else, they can hand them a Chromebook and they can sit at the little tables we have outside. We're going to try that at, we're going to try and do that at branches where we have space to do that. We're looking at Broad Rock and North Avenue as places to set up some little tables outside where folks might be able to just use the outside, and we know it's safe there. So those are, that's a really great, clever way we're trying to provide the service that we can provide.
That's really a good idea. Kudos to your team.
Absolutely. That is a good one, Scott. Hey, Scott, do we need to have like little 12 by 12 or something pop-up tents to go with those for those locations? Just so
all of our branches have 10 by 10 little pop-up things that they use if they have to go to like a festival or an event. And so they have little, I thought we were getting them tables, like little pop-up tables. So if they go to like a fall festival or things like that, sadly, we don't have any of those to go to right now, but when they're going, we can go to them. And we're really excited about our outreach in that way, is that we have our new online catalog, which is, we went through years of trying to get that installed. And as we've been closed, we've gotten it installed, and it's now existing in a software as a service setting. So it's no longer has to be maintained on servers by the city. We have those outsourced from our vendor remotely, and it's been working great. And the one thing that we've rolled out is we have a mobile version of the catalog that now can exist in like a HTML browser instead of having to be a piece of software. So now when we do outreach, we can sign people up for library cards electronically that way. We can do book searches. We can do everything inside the library, outside the library, and we can do it over an iPad. So we're very excited about that. And that's just been something we've been able to do while we've been in this COVID setting. And over the next month, you will see, we'll be moving from the current interface to what they call the enterprise platform. And so the search interface for the online catalog, hopefully next month, will be updated to a brand new look and brand new search interface. I mean, if you've ever done searches on our catalog, you know that it's a little bit behind. It's probably a catalog of 10, 15 years ago. And one of the most annoying things about our catalog is it has some really stupid stop words. So if you do a search like Sound and the Fury, you're gonna get no hits because "and" is a stop word. And so it's difficult, and our librarians can give you even better examples than that. So we believe and we know that the new enterprise version should fix that problem. So the search will be a lot better. And this has been something we've been working on for a long time. And the online catalog is really the bedrock and cornerstone of our library. So getting that thing updated and better is going to be a big deal. So next month you should see that in place. So that's exciting, and it's been something a long time in coming.
Excellent.
All right, I've gotten a little sidetracked. I've jumped from facilities to
Do you
catalog.
want to touch on finance at all?
Finance, we just got kicked off in the new fiscal year. No big surprises. The city did give everyone who was a non-exempt or an exempt employee $1,000 bonus. I don't know if you all saw that in the paper. So many of our employees who are not salaried got $1,000 bonus as part of the work, as kind of a hazard pay or, a thank you for all the work they've done during the pandemic. So that came out last month. Our salaried people didn't get anything. So the essential folks who like Tori and Adam and all of those folks didn't get anything. So I gave them, I have the ability to give administrative leave. So I gave them all 4 days of administrative leave. So it was, recognized for the work that they've been putting in these long 6 months with this COVID. I wish that we could have done more, but that's what we have. So, and the city did that in lieu of hazard pay. And, this crisis has just gone on so long, they've recognized the work that our city employees have done because they've had to go above and beyond and in kind of a scary time. So that came out this pay period. And so you'll see that in that financial report that you have there. But we're tracking like where we're supposed to be, and budget season is picking up.
You might touch on the encumbered versus spent to answer questions that people may have about why it looks like 2 months in we're on a couple of things, 5 months in on spending.
Yeah, if you go to page 17 of your report and you look at some of the percentages that we've spent, so like under collections, it looked like we spent 42% of our budget collection in the first 2 months. Keep in mind that is a total of encumbered and actual funds. So when we say we're going to spend something, we encumber the account. And for our book collections, we've encumbered it at about 230,000, but we haven't spent that much yet. So that's like a projection of what we're going to spend. So when you look at these, sometimes it skews what's being presented. It seems it's inflated, but it catches up as soon as we go into the year. So that could be a little misleading.
Scott, same is true with the contract and temp personnel, I assume, in some way?
Right. We encumber that to make sure that the funds don't get pulled to different places. When you encumber something, it definitely protects it from being pulled to other departments. Right. So that's one thing that we do to kind of preserve funding throughout the year.
Okay. And the membership dues is the only other one I'd like to quickly touch on. Just ask, obviously that's not an encumbrance issue since it's up about 1,000%. Just right. It's a minor. It's a 600 versus 6,000.
Right.
I mean, in our budget, did we just change what we were doing there in some fashion?
No, that was a contracted cost that the city didn't fund. So this fiscal year, when they cut our budget 9%, they just really cut across the board. That's a bill that we paid yearly. It's for the major cost is for the Urban Library Council. That's a group that we belong to that is a organization that provides information to us about libraries around the country who serve urban populations. And it's a valuable network because they provide information, they help lobby, they're in contact with the national legislature. They work with ALA. They're really one of our primary bodies that represent us. And when there's an issue coming up like the McMillan issue, they're on the front line fighting that. Oh, and a funny follow-up on that McMillan, the president of McMillan who started all that stuff, he's resigning. So he's going to be retiring. And I like to think it's because all of the guff we gave him about what they were doing with electronic books. So I just remembered to follow up on that with y'all because that came out last week. Sandy Treadway from the State Library shared that information with us. So I hope that'll be like a good lesson for the book publishers not to mess with us.
Let's hope so. Okay. One other thing in the, maybe two things in the finance budget in there. You've talked a lot about encumbering the finance and the expense side. On the revenue side, obviously the sales copy center is nothing we can do. It's not that big a deal, I don't think, and we're not going to see anything there. The state library aid and the law library, though, those are a little bit of a concern in that state library aid we see nothing. I assume that's a timing issue?
Yes. So the state library sends us our money quarterly, and that funding hasn't shown up on the ledger for the city of Richmond. So the funds come in they code it to those accounts, and so that one hasn't showed up yet. But it should be around 189. The 170,000 is an estimate for it, so that's about how much we get in state aid. And if you recall, I sent you all out an email last month asking you to contact Betsy Carr because she was trying to increase the aid to libraries during this COVID time. So that's where that money would come in at in the future, if we get it, if that clears.
Okay, and we anticipate that. So that leaves us with the perennial stepchild here, the law library. Gail, I see you smiling about that one.
I know, yeah.
Many of you are aware of it.
What's a board of trustees meeting without a discussion of the law library?
Yeah, the law library, for those, I guess, Gail, several of you are now aware of it, Barbara, obviously. Law library, we get that funding based upon a per case fee that goes through the court system.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of difficulty in properly accounting for that on the city's part or on the court's part or on both maybe. Scott, my concern is just, are we anticipating that the law library, is that straight enough now that we can actually count on the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have budgeted for that? Or are we going to come up somewhat short now that they've reconciled theoretically?
Good question. We were able to determine how much money we received last year because I called the courts. I called the clerk of both courts and said, how much did you all send us? Yeah. And it was about 198,000. So, and that tracked with what they put in the fund last year.
Yeah.
We had to play catch, the audit took place last year. There was an audit of the special funds. The city auditor did it. The results of that were, we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago where they presented the findings of it. They did determine that our special funds were $340,000 in the hole at the end of the fiscal year. The city did a journal voucher that was approved by council in an ordinance to straighten that out, and that was approved, and those funds were transferred. At the end of the fiscal year, they discovered that the law library was still $100,000 in the hole. So what we've done is we've made cuts to the law library. So Meldon has gone in and reduced spending on, I think she's reduced a lot of the books as opposed to electronic stuff. So we've cut back a lot. We've made some pretty significant cuts. I think eventually it'll catch up, but it's still a discussion that I'm having with finance of how we're going to fix that problem. So that's a city problem, and I'm going to definitely keep advocating that they fix that problem, but we are paying closer attention to it. And that issue of how much money goes into it was a discussion we had at the follow-up. You know how an audit will give you the findings and then the material weaknesses and the things they want you to fix. So that was one of the things that the auditors wanted us to fix is hey, what's the library going to do about the funding in this line item? And I pointed out to them that the library does not receive the money. Finance receives the money. So to reconcile this, someone needs to send us a report. And me calling over to the clerk of the court isn't probably the best way to get that report. So they're working on that. So that finding is still in there, and we're going to revisit it again in December. But we have made cuts to it. It's about $30,000 a month that's coming in for the law library. So if we can lower our costs, I'm hopeful that it'll catch up, but it's something we're working on.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Scott on the things he's covered so far? No? Okay, then I'm going to move along. Really, I don't have a separate chairman's report today. What I'd like to do is move on to our unfinished business. And I think the first order of business on that is to deal with a vice chair. As you all know, we have an opening for a vice chair. Janet Woody is not with us today, but she has nominated via email Chris Peterson to be our vice chair. I'd like to see if anyone would like to second that. Someone?
I'll second. Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett. Okay, is there anyone else who is interested in the vice chair position at this stage? And Chris, are you willing to do it?
I am, but I'm also willing to let a smarter person do it, which could be any of you. Yes.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any suggestions of another. So we will do a quick vote on that, which because of our doing this via Zoom, we need to do as a, hold on a second. Okay, as a verbal vote. And I vote aye. Emily,
Aye.
Barbara,
So, muted. Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Brent,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Garrett.
Aye.
Okay, Janet's not present, and Gail.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And before I forget, Garrett, can I add your vote as an aye to the approving the agenda and the consent agenda today?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. So then what we'd like to do next is move on to committee assignments. And first, I'm going to sort of go through some that I'd like to make the appointments to. And I honestly just should have contacted each one of you individually and have not gotten to that. So I'm going to jump in and just go through them with everyone and see whether everyone's okay with the way I'd like to do this. The executive committee is composed of 3 members, the chair and the vice chair. So Chris and I will be on that. I'd like to have Gail be our 3rd member on the executive committee, if that seems reasonable.
That
Gail,
works.
everyone else okay? Okay.
Yes.
Moving on to the facilities committee, I'd like to keep Janet as chair. Barbara, I am going to ask you, and you've been great over the years, I'm going to ask you to move from facilities to finance, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. And I'd like to put Brent Graves and Gail on facilities. And the reason for that, just to be real clear about things, is Brent's got a lot of experience in the facility side, and Gail knows our branches better than anybody who's on this Zoom today, I think, as far as the facilities side, including Cheryl. So
I was there from the start of the master plan, so
Gail has just done a
I've been around.
spectacular job for us in the past on that, and I think that institutional knowledge would be really helpful on that. Okay, so that moves us over to finance committee. Garrett, I'd like to ask you to be the chair of that, if you are okay with it.
Yeah, I would love to.
Great. Chris, I'd like you to stay on it, and Barbara will add you to that. And by the way, both facilities and finance, I sit on those as ex officio, the chair automatically does. Governance committee is completely vacant right now. And Emily, I am hoping that you'd be willing to take over that.
Yes, I'm willing.
Okay. And I'm going to add Janet to that committee with you. I need to verify that with her, but via email, she said she's willing to take a spot. So I think we're good with that. Emily, we're going to keep you as the foundation board rep, our rep to the foundation board, and Barbara, keep you as our rep to the Friends. Does that work?
Okay, that works.
Okay. That was remarkably easy and smooth. Thank you all.
What about Sharon?
Sharon, did I not put you? I thought I had you down here. I apologize. I think I had wanted to put you on finance. Does that work for you?
That's not my background, but I will do my best.
But where do you think you would fit well?
I'm not that familiar with what
Okay.
the committees do. So where
The real options here are facilities or finance. We can also put you on governance, but frankly, we have a full board, and 2 members on governance is probably enough right now for what Barbara and what Emily and Janet will be doing there.
I probably have more experience with facilities than finance.
Okay. I would ask Janet whether she feels like that's too many of you, but that's 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead, Sharon, and put you on there, because that's probably the busiest group right now anyway, right now. So Sharon, we'll put you on facilities, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Gail, Chris, you pointed that out, right? Thank you so much for catching my oversight on that.
I'm already starting to be a good vice chair.
I'm counting on that. So, okay. So we had the committee selection. I'm going to quickly touch on our 2 books for discussion. I think everyone should have got an email that I sent out that touched on what Kevin did with starting our sort of participate in. Like I said, we're not a book club or anything, but just as a library, we thought it was a nice thing to participate in sharing a little bit around a couple of different books. We've done Palaces for the People, and we've done Evicted. Evicted was the VCU read last year. This year, their read is One Person, No Vote, and we're going to do that. But prior to discussing that, I thought we would do the Jonathan Haidt book that you also got. So what I'm going to suggest is that at our October meeting, try to get through as much as possible of the Haidt book. And I apologize in that it is probably not as scintillating reading as some of the other books that we've done. But I think it just, when I read it the first time, it gave me some real interesting insights, just different perspective. And I'll be honest, I had not heard of Jonathan Haidt until I heard him on NPR one morning. And I listened to him, thought, oh, that was interesting. And some occasion came up a few weeks later. My wife gave me one of his books as a present. And I have found that he really is one who steps back and looks at things from a fairly unbiased viewpoint, which is hard to get in today's environment as politically charged things. But I'd like to try to talk about that, particularly his CARES foundations, the 6 foundations portion that you get to sort of in the middle of the book. I thought was an interesting portion. So if we can get to that point by next month, we'll just take a few minutes and discuss it. That brings us, I think, and I can't believe it, we may actually be running early for the first time ever since I've been chair. I'd like to move on to what's probably listed or would be listed as new business, but it's a continuation of old business, and that is the opening status, the curbside versus doing anything else and where we are. And let me just quickly say that I think the library staff has done a phenomenal job with curbside. I think that's working better than I'd anticipated. Scott, I think, knew it would, and I was a little skeptical, but it has really worked well as far as the circulation and the service we're providing. I was thrilled this morning to hear, and Scott, you had not mentioned to me that Hull Street was doing the Chromebooks outside. That, I think, is meeting a real need in some of the branches that I've been concerned about getting the doors open to meet. So if we're meeting it in another way, that's very good. Now, I think it does a nice job of splitting the safety issues in that it's outdoors, so we're a little less concerned about the positivity rating of things and still accomplishing that. So I think that protects our people, tries to keep the spread down, et cetera. I still would like to see, as we've had our cold snap here this past week, and nice to see it warming up right now, but I'd like to see us getting it back into the buildings at some time. And, the 5% positivity, it's sort of interesting. I looked at it again this morning before our call. We in the city have been, our 7-day average has been under 5% now. Well, we've been under 5% since the 12th. So we're getting on to a 2 weeks with it. A little slower in the 2 adjoining counties, which, if you'll notice, what was sent out shows a weighted average and a basic average. And the weighted average is saying, okay, we're in the city, we should put a larger weighting to what the rating is, positivity rating is in the city versus the adjoining counties, since most of our patrons do come from the city. But we shouldn't ignore the counties. And the other one was actually an average, as if they were equal size of each of the 3 jurisdictions merged together, which, anyway, I'd like to think that we'll use the weighted average as we go forward looking at that sum. The 5% positivity, one thing I will point out, just looking at it statistically, it's remarkable how the few times that we bump up well above the 5, it's also when the testing numbers drop down pretty far. So the positivity seems to be maybe a little bit affected by the testing, or maybe the testing is affected by the number of people who think they might be sick. It's hard to say, but I don't think that the 5% is a number that, if we keep bouncing back and forth, that we need to necessarily hold as we get into November and December. I think, through October, we're clearly there, but I'd like to think that we, despite not having the staffing that Henrico and Chesterfield have, may be able to start in the next 6 or 8 weeks at least, opening up in a limited fashion as they have, or as Pamunkey has for Hanover and Goochland. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Scott, did you want to talk about that? And do we want to make a motion to continue with curbside for the moment?
So those are great points, and that's what we've been tracking for the last month. I think today the positivity is right around 6%. Is that right, Adam? And I think, Bill, as you indicated, it's going down.
I'm looking at the state one, not Hopkins. The state's showing the city is 4.9 today.
Actually, I think it's lower than that. It's 4.1% is what.
Maybe it was 4.1. Yeah.
So the most recent numbers that we have were for September the 19th. On September the 19th, Richmond City was at 4.1, Henrico was at 4.9, and Chesterfield were at 4.9.
Okay.
That is the first time since the pandemic began that all three in the region were below 5. We looking at the numbers here. Yes, on the 12th we dipped below 5, but we've been looking at a 2-week window, and back on the 6th we were at 8.6%. The biggest thing watching this thing, sort of long-term trends, is that it has really been a roller coaster. You know, when we first started looking at this back in early August, the numbers that we were looking at that point were close to 9%. And then when we got to the 23rd of August, so a month ago today, we were down to 3.9. And so you can see both with us, Henrico, and Chesterfield, it'll be up here, it'll drop, it'll go back up, and then it'll drop again. So it's been unpredictable. And generally speaking, when we see a significant dip, we'll watch as one of the other counties usually starts to rise. It's sort of, we just keep changing place as things go on.
May I ask a question, please? Is there any feedback from Henrico? I think has opened up some branches. Any feedback from them about challenges they've had? Have they had to close, open, and then close again, or anything like that?
So the advantage, I mean, when we compare ourselves to Chesterfield and Henrico, the advantage that they have is they have double our staff and they have a lot more resources. Chesterfield has, I believe, 3 branches open with very limited hours, and they're able to run like a shifting system where they have duplicitous shifting, and so they can backfill when they have some exposures, and they've had exposures. Both library systems have had exposures.
Okay.
But they've been able to absorb them because they have staff. They have the staff to cover it. When we've had those exposures, we don't have that staff. So, you know, when it hit Hull Street, North Avenue, when you have an exposure, you've got to take out those folks around them. And when we do that, we can't manage it. The thing that's been, like when we compare ourselves, it's hard to compare ourselves to those rural systems that have so much more capacity and so many more resources, and it's just a different environment. We were comparing to this morning, we were having a discussion about DC public. DC, city similar to Richmond, actually same square miles, 65 square miles, a lot more people. Their positivity rate is down about 2% right now. And their library is in about the same status as us. They're not running curbside because they're not set up to, they're an urban, they're a much more densely packed urban library than we are. We can run curbside because we've got the space to do it. They're not doing it. They have like a grab and go situation where people can come in and their staff are separated from the public who are picking up their books. In many ways, they're in the same place that we are right now. They have one piece that they're offering computers by appointment in their libraries, and they're really segregating those out. They're like in meeting rooms. They're not even in like public areas. So DC, who has a lower positivity than us, they are in the same status, and I believe they're starting to look at opening up more. And it's they have a lot more cleaning protocols in place, and there's just there's just a lot of other things that they're doing that we can't do because, again, they're DC and they even have more resources than us. So I think for now we're doing exactly what we can do, safely do. I'm impressed with what we are doing, and the numbers are showing that 70% of circulation's pretty good, considering that we're not doing any events, we're not letting people in the building, we're not doing any programs. A lot of those things that we can do, that we used to do, that got those numbers last year, we can't do. So in many ways, I think we're achieving many pieces of our mission. Those things that we can achieve, we can't really do anyway. So in many ways, we're hitting, I believe we're hitting our marks. I think if we just stick with that positivity, we're going to be below 5%, and then we add in computers, and we do that strategically. And I had that discussion today with our staff. What does that look like? Can we lay out a plan? If you go to DC's website, they have we're in phase 3, they're not even in phase 3 yet. So they've laid out how they're going to proceed going forward. That's one thing I would like to develop over the next few weeks with our staff, so we can put out there, hey, when we hit this point, this is what's going to happen. And so that's my recommendation right now. Again, I'd like to hear what hear your all's input on it as well.
So I thought you made a good point, and Tori did a really good job last meeting about how we might roll it out and to go slowly, because I would like us not to close again. I don't want us to open and then, a cold snap comes, numbers go up, and I don't know that we can avoid it, but if we're prudent about things, that's my concern, is opening, closing. And I thought Tori had a good plan. The other thing I'll mention is I've always really worried about vulnerable populations. And I am enormously happy that you've gotten a Zoom account and might be able to reach out to those Hispanic children or children with a second language via those. I mean, it's a new tool in our arsenal of helping the vulnerable. So kudos on the Zoom.
Well, and the Zoom is even, we're going to start offering people the opportunity to book Zoom meetings, because a regular Zoom account ends after 40 minutes if you have an unpaid account. So people will be able to really use the library for a meeting in a virtual way. So that's exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Gail?
Yeah. Could I ask, does the city have a program for flu shots? I'm just thinking, as we're moving into that season, that compounding flu exposure and virus is just going to be a real disaster if we have that kind of issue.
Gail's right. We've got COVID and flu. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And that's
although I heard somebody say that mask wearing may reduce flu exposure. So cross fingers on that.
Exactly.
And I do know that Virginia Department of Health has started their free flu clinics across the city. They begin October 2nd. They begin in October. So those will be across the city at different community centers, recreation centers, management offices, things like that.
Good.
Right. We had reached out to them and we're working with them because we wanted to have a clinic like that, not only do the flu shot, but the hepatitis A shot and distribute Narcan. So we work pretty closely with them. But getting back to where we're at in terms of our open status, I want to be open too. I agree with Chris. The last thing I want to do is open up again and slam the door again.
And Scott, let me point out, when we do open, at that point, I think we don't close because we bump up to 5.5 or 6% positivity. I think we open that we have to stay open until we have a reason to close. Not now this numbers, because the numbers are going to bounce back and forth. And if we're at the idea of anytime it gets above 5, we close, there's no point in opening. I think
that's a good point. We have to come to agreement on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good discussion point. What would you all like to do?
Ideas?
Because if it increases the governor's going to shift us back a phase, right? So allegedly, when we moved from phase 2 to phase 3, I believe the governor wanted the positivity at a certain level, but he didn't honor that, and we went ahead and opened. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think Adam and Tori know better than me. I know that when we moved from phase 2 to phase 3 on July 1st, I don't know that it was below 5%. We were still at like 12%, weren't we?
Yeah, so 10% was the governor's goal. And at the time that he dropped us, it was not where he was supposed to be at, but they decided to go with that, and they were bouncing back and forth about whether or not they were going to bounce back up, but they decided to stay here. And that's why they've made some tighter restrictions on different regions as necessary. Once it starts getting around 8 or 9, they get real nervous in the governor's office.
So, and we shifted at that point, and we were open for 2 weeks, and we couldn't make phase 3 work, and we were trusting what he was saying.
Yeah.
So I think the 5% is a good baseline. I agree. I don't want to yo-yo back and forth between.
Right.
So that's why we need to be really deliberate in what we're opening up, and be prepared that if the governor shifts us from phase 3 to phase 2, we're going to have to move like that.
Right.
But how we weather the phase 3 like condition red, yellow, green, that's what we need to work out.
Yeah, and I'm going to defer to you guys to recommend to us what is best. But when Tori and you talked last month, you talked about going about reopening very slowly. And I think the board would be comfortable if you said, here are the phases. We'd like to move more and more and more. And then if something bad happens, you just stay in that phase for a little bit longer.
Yep.
You don't close, you just don't expand. So I believe you've already thought through doing things slowly, incrementally. If the data gets bad, we stay where we are. Now, do I remember that correctly?
No, I think you're right. I'm just also thinking through like scenarios of things happening. So
yeah, well, bad things happen, yeah.
Right. So should we have another bad thing happen, like we have another situation like we had at Hall Street or North Avenue, we'll just absorb that. We'll close that location and we'll hold it where we're at and keep going. And then if things continue to get worse, we'll make that call at the time.
And constantly, I mean, the staff has a lot on their mind, but they have to constantly know that it's up to them in the building to take all of these precautions.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that we've added that I think I told you about this last month was we're doing a self-health check every morning. We've asked people to take their temperature and report it on a Google document just to keep everybody informed. And that's a good step. I mean, I keep imploring them that, we have to look out for each other. We wear masks to help our coworkers, and we monitor our health to make sure that we're not exposing each other. So, and that seems to be working. And I feel like everybody has pulled together and is doing a great job of that.
And you're right. If you wear masks and social distance and wash your hands, we'll be good. Yeah. We know what has to be done.
Right. And as we go along, like last month at this time, the schools weren't in yet. The universities were coming back. And so every day we're getting more data and we're learning more about how that's working. So
and I think we're understanding the data better too. I mean, we're seeing pockets of it. We're seeing the bumps in it. We're seeing the number of tests. I mean, if you look at the states that have the lowest rates outside of the ones that had the really big problems with it, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, et cetera, a lot of those are states, the ones that show, you're finding states that are showing a 2% positivity rating and things. They're also showing a much higher percent of the population being tested.
Right. I'd like to jump in on that with what Bill's saying. That was part of the presentation last month, is that we do see when we have high test numbers, we have low positivity. When we have low test numbers, we have high positivity. And that was one of the things that Johns Hopkins study is looking at, is how many times we're testing the same people and at testing stability. So that is one of the things that we should be considering. At this time, the data, based on what Johns Hopkins is saying, is that Virginia isn't the most stable in its ability to test at a consistent level. And in particular, if you look at the testing numbers in Henrico, Chesterfield, and Richmond, Chesterfield does tend to be the most stable. And even though their number is higher than that 5%, it's a fairly stable map if you look at it, because they're keeping those testing numbers very similar. So I think that's another reason why that 14-day average is very important, because it gives a better portrait of what's really happening, because we don't have that strong stability in our testing levels. So it is really easy to go from 8% to 4%. And what is that really telling us?
Right. And vice versa. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of last week, we saw VDH posting numbers for Chesterfield where they started to drop. And they dropped from that pretty much low 6 all the way down to today's numbers were 4.9. And I was floored by it. I touch in with Tori, Scott, and some of the other folks on staff, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. This is a complete aberration. It must be, because I've never seen this happen.
Well, there are odd things in there. I mean, you just look at the testing, and I don't think the state is including some of these. But for example, if we were sitting in Charlottesville, UVA required all their students to be tested in advance. I don't know whether the state included those numbers and where they included them for, whether they put them all down in Charlottesville or where those students were living. But they came back with a less than 0.5% or something positivity rate. So events like that, or an event where the city health department goes out and does testing in a given area, and you suddenly have an extra 200 tests that isn't coming in through the medical system, where somebody's been sick enough that they felt they should test, can affect that. So I mean, that's part of what's going on from the people I've been talking to, that we see a lot of bumps.
And then there's a lot of delay as well, because when you do those massive amounts of testing, we get backed up several days. So magically, numbers from days before will change.
Right.
So that's why, again, we want to keep that 14 days so that we can really get the picture.
Yeah. But I think we're all in agreement. It sounds like that once we open, we can't look at it and say, oh, we went up to 5.5 here, so now we've got to close. That becomes a question of, obviously, if the state does something as far as rolling it back, we have to follow that. But outside of that, it really pretty much is what we can handle as a library at that point. Adjusting, as Chris said, holding at a level, or longer than we had planned maybe, or closing 1 or 2 branches while keeping others open. That may even mean keeping critical branches open while staff from non-critical ones goes over and staffs theirs. For example, if we had to close West End to keep Broad Rock open for a week or 2, I think a lot of us would think that's reasonable. Things like that. So that's the kind of decision that I really think once we go into the opening, the staff of the library needs to have recommendations, and we as a board need to look at and make some of those decisions. And I know it's harder for the library to say, oh, well, it's more important to have Broad Rock open than West End. As somebody who sits in the 1st district, I like the West End library, but I don't think it's as critical that it be open as Broad Rock or East End maybe. So, I just think we as a board need to help give some of that guidance. That's a little more than just the basic operational.
Right. Yeah, and these are the challenges that I appreciate us talking through and working through, because it helps us understand where we're at. Because we want to definitely make the decision that's going to be safest, number one, and going to do the most we can for the patrons that we're trying to serve. So
absolutely,
that's very helpful. Thanks for all that.
Thank you. So I think we've covered. Any other questions about the opening or the operations decisions at this point? No? Is there any new business that anyone would like to bring up? Wow. Okay. If there are no objections, then we're at 12:39. We're ahead of schedule. And I'm going to motion to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I don't have to make a motion because we're on a Zoom here. Oh, one last thing. Just a quick reminder. I put it in my email. But I think it's great that we communicate via email as we can. But please remember that we can't communicate with more than one other person, basically via email, without getting sideways with the open meeting clause. So you can write to Scott and to me, you can write to Chris, but not to Chris and to me. We'll pass things along and try to do what we can, but we can't send something out. I can send out to all of you as an announcement, but we can't discuss things back and forth as a group with all of you responding. So I guess my pitch is don't do a reply all, okay?
Laura's on mute, but she'd probably say, good job.
Yeah, I know. I try to keep Laura happy. You know, you want to keep her.
Is it possible to get a list of board members and email addresses?
Yeah, Jonna, can you send out a list of those?
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
does anyone have an objection with adding a phone contact number to that?
I have no objection. I
No.
would like it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and put phone numbers on there too. I think, you know, as a group, we should be able to talk back and forth. That's particularly true. Jonna will be sending out in the minutes or before that, the committee assignments. So I think it's important that we start looking at that. Scott just stepped out for a second, but we'll be trying to get the committees.
I was getting this
There we go.
manual that all of our new members should get. This is your board manual, and it has all of that information in it. We're trying to figure out how to distribute it electronically. We're going to put it in a PDF and send it out. So it has lots of that stuff that's will be very helpful to our new board members, and it does have all that contact information in it. So hopefully we'll be getting you one of these soon. Maybe if we can't get it electronically, I'll send it out physically. So.
Sure. Well, and with Sharon, Brent, Garrett, who else I missed?
I still have mine, Gianna.
I would say we do need the updated list to everyone though. All of our lists are a little bit dated on that now.
Well, we could send out an updated page so you can tear out the old page and put a new one in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I need new bylaws. I think you made a bylaws change.
No, there were no bylaw changes.
Oh, okay.
Since Gail was there haven't been any?
Okay.
Nope, but I'll go ahead and send you a copy, okay?
Yeah, thanks. I have my notebook and everything.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, if there's nothing further, we'll go ahead and adjourn. And our next meeting is the 28th of October. And even though it says main library / electronic meeting, unless something changes dramatically, we are electronic.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Wow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.